A street boy walked into a garage, his stomach empty and hands trembling. He stood before everyone and asked, "Can I help if you give me food?" They humiliated him. They laughed at him, but seconds later that barefoot boy discovered what no adult had been able to fix. And what happened next changed his life forever. From what city are you watching this? Comment below. Leave your like. Subscribe because this story will not only move you, it will inspire you. The metallic garage door opened with a dry creak. No one expected visitors. The air was thick with smoke, grease, and exhaustion. A boy appeared in the doorway, thin with ragged clothes. His hair matted with sweat and dust. He was barely 10 years old, but his hardened gaze seemed to belong to someone who had lived too much. He took 2 steps inside. "What are you doing here?" thundered one of the mechanics, lifting his head from an engine. The boy swallowed. His stomach rumbled so loudly that everyone heard it. He took a deep breath and, with a trembling but clear voice, blurted out, "Can I help if you give me food?" The garage erupted in dry, cruel laughter. One bent over, clutching his stomach. Another pointed at him as if he had seen a clown in mid-performance. "Help you?" scoffed a bald man. "You cannot even reach the workbench. All you know how to do is beg, young chap," added another. Remy, as he was called, clenched his fists. Hunger tore him in two, but he did not move. In a corner, an old car had been stalled with its hood open and everyone frustrated around it. Remy looked at it as if he could hear its pulse. "That car has a loose spark plug," he blurted out. Silence fell abruptly. Mr. Caldwell, the garage owner, frowned. "What did you say?" "The spark plug is loose," Remy repeated, taking a step forward. "Shut up." Brock, a burly veteran mechanic with a face hardened by grease and resentment, cut him off. "What would you know, you hungry street urchin?" But Remy had already climbed onto the car's fender. He plunged his hand decisively between wires and parts, twisted, adjusted something, and then climbed down. "Start it." Everyone looked at each other in disbelief. Mr. Caldwell signaled, and another mechanic turned the key. The engine roared to life. Not a single misfire, not a single sputter. The laughter froze. The metallic echo of the engine filled the garage like a punch to the chest. Remy did not smile. He just looked down and murmured shyly, "Can I have something to eat?" That sentence cut through the air like a dagger. He was not asking for applause. He was not asking for respect, only food. A female voice spoke from behind. "How did you know that?" It was Elena. She had emerged from the office, surprised. Her dark ponytail gleamed under the spotlight, and in her eyes was indignation and tenderness at the same time. "I heard it, the engine," Remy replied as if speaking to himself. Brock scoffed, red with fury. "Bah, he got lucky. That car was messed up in every way. Anyone would have seen it." Elena turned to him firmly. "Then why did you not see it, Brock?" she shot back with an edge that silenced everyone. The man clenched his teeth, furious. Elena walked towards the boy, took a plate of jollof rice and some fried plantain from the kitchen, and handed it to his dirty hands. "Eat, dear," she said softly but firmly, glancing at the others. "No one here should mock someone who only asks for a bite." Remy sat in a corner and ate with reverent slowness, as if each grain of rice and piece of plantain might disappear at any moment. The rest watched him in silence, between shame and bewilderment. Brock could not hold back. "Listen carefully, brat. This is not your place. Do not stick your nose where it does not belong again." Remy lowered his head. He did not answer. "Enough, Brock." Elena cut in firmly, placing herself between them. "He is a child, not your enemy." The atmosphere remained charged, tense, as if something had changed forever. When evening fell, Remy got up, thanked them in a low voice, and walked towards the door. Outside, the street awaited him with its harshness, but before leaving, he stopped, turned his head, and looked at the garage with silent determination. His eyes, tired and bright, said it all. He was coming back. Elena understood immediately, and Brock did too. That is why, as the boy disappeared around the corner, he murmured venomously, "If that young chap comes back, I will make sure he never sets foot in here again." Elena did not answer, but internally she had already taken a side. That boy was not going to disappear like the others, not while she was there. The garage engine roared again, but what truly resonated was that fragile, brave voice that still vibrated in the air. "Can I help if you give me food?" And everyone knew the story had only just begun. The sky hung gray with low clouds that seemed to crush everything. Remy had slept on the street under a broken awning, his stomach still half empty. But the only thing resonating in his head was not hunger, but the roar of that car engine in the garage, the vibrant sound that had brought the car back to life when he adjusted the part. He got up, brushed the dust from his clothes with his hand, and walked back towards the garage. Each step was heavy, but inside him was a strange spark, a certainty that he belonged in that place, even if no one wanted him there. When he pushed open the metallic door, the noise filled everything again. Hammering, compressor hums, hoarse voices. Conversations died down as soon as they saw him. "Look at him!" Brock spat, dropping a greasy black rag. "The child prodigy!" Some laughed, but it was a tense, uncomfortable laugh. Others averted their gaze. The humiliation from the previous afternoon still weighed heavily. None of them had known how to fix the car, and a street urchin had managed it in seconds. Mr. Caldwell looked up from his desk. He said nothing, just looked at him as if evaluating whether it was worth throwing him out or leaving him alone. Elena was the only one to smile at him. "You came back." Remy nodded. "You said I could." She nodded too and with a gesture pointed to a corner. "If you want to stay, start by cleaning, and then we will see." Remy ran to the bucket and mop, knelt on the floor, and began scrubbing hard, as if his life depended on leaving it sparkling clean. He did not complain. He did not ask for anything more. The mechanics watched him out of the corner of their eyes. Half the garage seemed uncomfortable with his presence, as if every movement of the boy was a reminder of their failure. "He is a parasite," Brock murmured to the others. "What do you think is going to happen? That he is going to teach us how to work?" One of his colleagues silenced him with a gesture, but the venom was already in the air. Hours later, while cleaning, Remy heard a strange noise, not in the voices or the machines, but in a car parked at the back, covered by a tarp. He stood up curiously and approached slowly. He lifted the fabric and saw an open, old, dusty engine. His eyes shone. He stretched out his hand and caressed the parts as if they were treasure. A flash of memory struck him, his father's voice deep and calm telling him, "Listen, son, an engine has a heart. If it beats irregularly, something is wrong. Never ignore it." The image of those strong hands teaching him to hold a wrench, and then suddenly, a blurred memory of screams and a brutal crash. Remy blinked, shaking his head, returning to the present. He leaned over the engine and, without thinking, turned a nut. Then another. He tested the movement of a rusty part. With a screwdriver found on the floor, he tightened a loose screw. He could not help it. Working with it was like breathing. "What are you doing?" Remy startled. Elena was behind him, arms crossed. "Just looking at it," he said timidly. She watched him in silence. She saw the boy's hands, small but firm, moving naturally among the parts. It was not chance. It was not luck. There was something more. "You have the hands of a mechanic," she murmured. Remy lowered his gaze. "My father taught me a few things." "Your father?" she asked. He nodded. "He used to fix cars, I think. I do not remember well." Elena wanted to ask more, but Brock suddenly appeared, interrupting like a shadow. "Get away from that car, young squirt," he shouted, snatching the screwdriver from his hands. "Who gave you permission?" Remy recoiled, scared. "Nothing," Brock roared. "You are not here to play. Go mop the floor. That is all you know how to do." Elena stepped forward. "Brock, enough. He is a child." "He is a nuisance, Elena, and a danger. Today he will touch a wire and burn down the entire garage." The others watched without intervening. Some seemed to agree with Brock. Others, uncomfortable, preferred to keep silent. Remy pressed his lips together. He wanted to say that he knew what he was doing, that he did not need permission, but instead, he lowered his head. He bent down, picked up the mop, and continued cleaning. Brock looked at him with a twisted smile, satisfied at having put him in his place. But in Remy's eyes, there was something no one noticed except Elena. A spark of silent obstinacy, a certainty that would not be extinguished. Hours passed. As evening fell, one of the mechanics struggled with a truck that would not start. He sweated, cursed, and pounded the hood as if to tear its soul out. Remy, from his corner, watched. He could not help it. He saw how the man turned the key and the engine barely coughed, how he insisted on checking the wrong wires. Finally, without thinking, he said in a low voice, "It is the fuel pump." The mechanic heard him. He turned around furiously. "What did you say?" Remy swallowed. "That the pump is not sending pressure." The man burst out laughing with disdain. "And how do you know that, young chap?" Brock appeared again like a dog sniffing an opportunity. Again, this young squirt trying to act like a know-it-all. Elena, however, raised her eyebrows. "Try what he says." The mechanic grumbled, but he did it. He checked the pump and cursed. "It is failing." The murmurs grew, several gazes fixed on Remy, half surprised, half uncomfortable. Brock took another step. He pointed at him with a finger trembling with anger. "This proves nothing. This young chap is just looking for attention. If we let him, tomorrow he will want my place in the garage." Mr. Caldwell, who had remained silent until then, raised his voice. "Enough. No one is saying he is going to take anyone's place. He is a child, and I decide who comes in and who leaves here." The atmosphere grew cold. Remy lowered his head, but inside he felt something strange. Pride, fear, hope. Elena smiled at him subtly, conspiratorially. Brock looked at him with open hatred, a slow-burning hatred that would not stop. That night, when Remy returned to the street, he sat on the sidewalk and looked at his hands. They were greasy, small, dirty, but capable of things he himself did not fully understand. He closed his eyes, and again a memory struck him, his father lifting him into his arms, showing him a shining steering wheel. "Listen to the roar, son. Engines do not lie." Remy pressed his hands against his chest. He did not know what destiny awaited him, but he sensed that those small hands held great secrets, and no matter how much Brock wanted to chase him away, he was going to return to the garage. At the garage, things unfolded differently. Remy did not enter with a trembling voice or with a question on his lips. This time, as soon as he crossed the metallic door, he found a mop and began to clean the floor full of black stains. No one asked him to, no one gave him permission. He simply did it. Some mechanics ignored him, others murmured under their breath, but he did not stop. Each time the bucket filled with dirty water, he emptied it and ran back. Each time a rag saturated with grease, he rinsed it and used it again. Elena watched him from a distance. There was something in the way that boy worked. It was not servile obedience. It was a hunger to stay, to earn a place. Mid-morning, one of the mechanics snorted. "Hey, young chap, bring me the half-inch wrench." Remy hesitated, looked at the table full of tools, examined them one by one, and without further hesitation chose the correct one. He took it to the man, who looked at him with surprise. "It was luck." Brock intervened with a poisonous tone. "He probably grabbed the first one he saw." Minutes later, another asked for a flathead screwdriver. Remy brought it to him in seconds. Then pliers, then an exact socket. He did not miss once. Elena smiled. It was not luck. That boy knew how to look, knew how to listen. His eyes absorbed every detail like a sponge. At lunchtime, Mr. Caldwell gave the order to close for half an hour. The men gathered at a long, makeshift wooden table. Elena appeared with an additional plate, hot jollof rice, and a piece of chicken. She placed it in front of Remy. "Here, you earned it." Remy looked at the plate as if it was not real. His hands trembled as he took the first spoonful of rice. He brought it to his mouth, and as soon as he bit into it, tears escaped him. He did not try to hide them. He ate slowly with a mixture of urgency and reverence. The others watched him in silence. Some shifted uncomfortably. Brock scoffed, annoyed. "Enough of spoiling him." He blurted out, "This is not a soup kitchen." Elena glared at him. "No one here is spoiling anyone. He is working." "Working? He is a squirt. Or are you going to tell me that mopping is a profession?" Brock sneered. Remy lowered his gaze, but Elena did not back down. "A profession begins with learning to clean. No one is born knowing everything." Mr. Caldwell, who had been eating in silence, raised his voice. "Enough. The boy helps, and as long as I allow it, he stays." Brock clenched his teeth, pounded the table with his fist, got up, and walked away, muttering insults. The afternoon progressed with a strange air. Remy, in silence, picked up fallen parts, organized screws by size, and cleaned the workbenches. No one asked him to, but he did it with discipline. At one point, Elena caught him trying to organize a box of filters. He was not just separating them by size, but by wear and compatibility. "Who taught you that?" she asked curiously. Remy shrugged. "My father used to say that every part has its place. If you mix them up, everything breaks." Elena watched him for a few seconds. That boy was not making things up. He had learned from someone who truly knew. Suddenly, a crash shook the garage. Brock had purposely knocked over a box full of parts near Remy. "Pick it up, if you are so smart," he shouted. Remy immediately bent down. He carefully arranged them one by one without losing his composure. "Faster, you good-for-nothing!" Brock urged him, approaching menacingly. Elena intervened. "Enough, Brock! Do not interfere!" he roared, swatting the rag Remy was holding. The boy stepped back, scared, but he did not cry. Mr. Caldwell appeared, serious, with a dry voice. "Brock, one more time and you are out on the street, not him." Silence became heavy. Brock pressed his lips together, filled with suppressed rage, and went to the back to continue working. Remy picked up the rag from the floor, held it for a second, then wrung it out and resumed cleaning as if nothing had happened. Elena approached and knelt beside him. "Do not listen to him. You keep going." Remy nodded, but in his eyes there was a new shine, different from fear, a spark that was just beginning to ignite. When everyone left, Remy stayed a few more minutes sweeping. Elena saw him and approached softly. "You worked well today." He smiled timidly, his cheeks still stained with grease. "Thank you for the food." Elena gently ruffled his hair. "Do not thank me for it. Earn it every day." Remy nodded forcefully. That phrase stuck with him like a challenge. He walked out onto the street with tired steps, but inside him, something other than hunger burned. Hope. The first spark of a flame no one could extinguish. The garage opened early. The air smelled of cheap coffee and exhaust fumes. Remy was already there mopping before anyone asked him to. His small hands moved quickly, but his curious eyes never stopped scanning every corner, every tool, every part. Elena entered a few minutes later, greeted everyone with a quick gesture, and paused for a moment to look at the boy. There was something about him that did not let her rest. It was not just the way he moved, as if he had spent years in a garage. It was his last name. The day before, when Remy had murmured his full name, she had repeated it, a low voice. Remy Harlan. A spark had ignited her memory. During the morning, while the others worked on a battered truck, Elena stayed in the office reviewing old papers, but instead of invoices, she searched on her phone, typing, "Harlan Nigerian racing legend." The results surprised her. Yellowed photographs, digitized newspapers, forgotten headlines. Victor Harlan, 3-time national motorsport champion, a young man with a wide smile, holding trophies, a face similar to the boy who was now mopping in her garage. Elena put her hand to her mouth. In the articles, there were also dark notes. An accident. A fall from grace. A man who went from being a legend to being forgotten. She spent a long time looking at those photos, as if searching for traces of Remy in the eyes of that champion. When she went out to the work area, she found him organizing screws. She approached and knelt to his height. "Remy, you said your father fixed cars." The boy nodded without looking up. "Do you remember his name?" "Victor, I think." "Victor Harlan." Elena swallowed. "And he raced cars?" Remy hesitated, a flicker of memory, a roar on a track, his father's voice shouting his name. "Yes, he raced." Elena looked at him intently. It was not imagination. There was a hidden truth in that boy. But before she could ask further, "Oh, my free," loud laugh resonated from them. "Ha ha ha, do not tell me." It was Brock who had overheard the conversation. "Now it turns out this scruffy kid is the son of a star." The others looked up, curious. Brock raised his voice, enjoying the attention. "Did you hear? The young squirt says his father was Victor Harlan, the very 3-time champion." The laughter multiplied. Some scoffed. Others feigned disbelief. "Sure, and I am the president's nephew," one ironized. "And me, the son of an astronaut." Another added amidst laughter. Remy flinched, feeling the ground open beneath his feet. I did not invent it," he whispered. Brock leaned over him with a twisted smile. "Listen, young chap, even if you were his son, you would not have the right to be here. But since you are a nobody, better not make up stories." Elena stepped forward, indignant. "Brock, stop bothering him." "Bothering him?" He laughed. "I am just saving him from disappointment. That boy has nothing to do with a champion. He is an imposter." The words pierced Remy's chest like knives. He did not know if it was true. He barely remembered fragments, broken images of a man at the wheel. And what if he really was making it up? And if his hungry child's mind had created a hero who never existed? He lowered his gaze, feeling all eyes piercing him. Elena, firm, placed herself between him and Brock. "Imposter, he is a child and deserves respect." Brock snorted but moved away, leaving the threat hanging in the air. That afternoon, Remy worked in silence. He did not speak again, not when he was sent for parts, nor when he was called to clean. He just obeyed, but inside, he was churning. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his father on the track. He saw the checkered flag, heard the engines roaring. Was it real, or were they just invented echoes to fill the void? When night fell and the garage closed, Remy left for the street with his head bowed. Elena watched him from the door, her brow furrowed. She knew that something big was hidden in that boy, and that if what she sensed was true, the shadows of the past were about to return. The garage was in full swing. An old truck had arrived since dawn. It would not start, and no one could find the fault. The mechanics had tried everything. New battery, spark plugs, alternator, nothing. The owner, a robust man with a hoarse voice, was already losing patience. If you do not fix it today, I am taking it out of here, and I am not coming back. He threatened, arms crossed. Mr. Caldwell muttered under his breath. It was a big client, and losing him meant money. Remy, who was sweeping silently in the corner, listened to every failed attempt. He observed, he analyzed. His eyes shone with that rare concentration that Elena did not miss. When everyone stepped away in frustration, Remy took a step forward. I can try. The laughter was automatic. Brock, the first to let out his own, leaned over mockingly. What are you going to do, young squirt? Blow on the engine to make it start? Mr. Caldwell, however, remained thoughtful. The memory of the car Remy had revived days earlier still lingered. Let him, Elena said suddenly. What do we lose? The client raised an eyebrow, curious. If the young chap fixes it, I will pay double. But if he ruins it, you will refund my money completely. Silence fell like a block. Mr. Caldwell did not respond immediately, but in the end he nodded. Remy approached the truck. Opened the hood, smelled, felt, listened, closed his eyes for a second as if trying to hear a hidden heart. Then he took a wrench and checked the fuel pump. Here is the problem. He murmured with quick movements. He adjusted a broken hose, tightened clamps, twisted a rusty screw. The mechanics watched him in a silence heavy with disbelief. Try it now, he requested. The client got in, turned the key, the engine coughed, then roared to life. The noise filled the garage like thunder. The client's eyes widened. It cannot be. Some mechanics whistled, others smiled incredulously. Elena smiled proudly. Remy, his face stained with grease, lowered his gaze. He was not expecting applause. He had only wanted to prove he could do it. But then Brock stepped forward, his face red with rage. Stop, he shouted. That engine was going to start anyway. He did not do anything special. No one responded. Some doubted. Others seemed to believe him. Mr. Caldwell, tired of arguments, spoke. The important thing is that the client leaves with the car running. The client nodded, pulling money from his pocket. This boy is worth more than all of you combined, he said without filter. The words were like gasoline to a fire. Brock clenched his jaw, his eyes fixed on Remy with hatred. That afternoon, the tension rose. Remy went back to organizing tools, but every time he tried to pick one up, he noticed something strange. Loose handles, bent wrenches, broken screwdrivers. He realized someone was sabotaging them. Elena saw his frustration and approached. What is wrong? Remy showed her a broken wrench. It was fine yesterday. Elena looked towards the back where Brock was working, feigning indifference. Her jaw tightened. Ignore him, she told the boy, though inside she seethed. But Brock was not planning to stop. Near closing time, Remy bent down to adjust a small part that had fallen to the floor. At that moment, Brock approached from behind and violently snatched the screwdriver from him. That is enough, young squirt, he spat. This is not your place. Remy stood still, his heart racing. The other mechanics glanced uneasily. Get out before I kick you out. Brock raised his hand as if to hit him. Elena immediately intervened, placing herself in front of the boy. Do not you dare, Brock. The silence in the garage was absolute. Only the distant hum of a compressor could be heard. Brock, breathing heavily, slowly lowered his hand, but his gaze made it clear that this was not over. Remy, still trembling, picked up the screwdriver from the floor. He did not cry. He did not respond. He just remained silent as if he knew that every word could cost him dearly. Elena placed a hand on his shoulder. Do not worry. It will pass. But Remy felt it differently. It would not pass. That hatred was growing, and sooner or later, it would explode. That night, upon leaving, Remy was not thinking about the engine he had made roar, nor the looks of respect some had given him for the first time. He was thinking about Brock's shadow, about that raised hand. Inside, he knew Elena had saved him, but he swore to himself that one day he would have enough strength not to need anyone to defend him. That silent, hidden oath was the truly impossible repair of that day, the repair of his own wounded heart. The garage had become a minefield for Remy. Every day he walked through that metallic door, he felt like something could go wrong at any moment. It was not paranoia. It was Brock, the veteran, that man with heavy hands and a look of resentment, who seemed to live only to make him stumble. Ever since Remy had achieved the impossible with that truck, Brock's hatred had grown like a poison. He could not stand that a street boy, barely 10 years old, had accomplished what he, with 20 years of experience, had not. And if it depended on him, that young squirt would not last long inside. It all started one morning when a client came to pick up his vehicle. Remy had helped clean the engine area the day before, nothing more. However, Brock, in silence, loosened a key bolt before delivery. When the client started the car, the engine vibrated violently and almost stalled completely. "This is worse than before," he shouted furiously. Brock did not waste a second in pointing with his grease-stained finger. "It must have been the young squirt. They let him mess around, and look at the result." Mr. Caldwell's eyes fixed on Remy. The boy, his hands still wet from the bucket, stammered, "I only cleaned around it, nothing else." The silence was thick. Some looked at him with distrust. Others hesitated. Elena stepped forward and raised her voice. "It was not him. I saw him. He was with me organizing parts." The client snorted, annoyed, and Mr. Caldwell ordered another mechanic to fix the damage. But the stain of doubt had already been left. Remy, for the first time in a long time, felt someone pointing at him with open injustice. The days did not improve. Remy tried to help by organizing, fetching wrenches or screwdrivers, but every time someone took a tool he had touched, something failed. Loose handles, broken tips, wrenches that seemed to bend without reason. "See?" One of the men thundered, showing a broken wrench. "This is useless." Brock took advantage like a beast smelling blood. "Who do you think was playing with them?" he said, staring at the boy. Remy wanted to open his mouth, but Elena stepped forward. "Those tools were already old, Brock. Do not try to blame him for everything." "Of course, defend him." The man spat, smiling venomously. "But when he leaves us without an entire garage, do not say I did not warn you." Remy lowered his gaze. He did not know how to prove his innocence. He just felt that every time he tried to help, someone had already set a trap to blame him. The hardest blow came with a recently repaired truck. "Mr. Caldwell asked Remy to clean the floor while one of the mechanics adjusted the engine. When they tried to start it, the vehicle would not turn over. "I'm a boy." They checked the wires and discovered one was disconnected. Brock smiled like a jackal. "See, the young chap keeps putting his hands where they do not belong." Remy turned red. "It was not me," he murmured, but no one responded. The silence was worse than the mockery. Elena walked towards him and leaned in to speak to him in a whisper. "Do not blame yourself. I know it is not you." He nodded weakly, but inside him, a shadow grew. The enemy was not attacking him head-on. He was doing it in the dark, like a ghost, leaving the blame on him. With each passing day, the accusations began to permeate the rest of the garage. When Remy passed nearby, some mechanics lowered their voices, but not enough. "Since he arrived, there are always failures. They say he is smart, but I only see problems." These phrases weighed on him more than hunger. It was like carrying a sack of stones he had not chosen. Elena remained firm, but she could not silence all the doubts. Meanwhile, outside the garage, something very different began to happen. A client who had witnessed the boy revive an engine told the story at the corner shop. He repeated it with astonishment. A thin street boy fixed what no one else could. Another, at a nearby food stall, added his exaggerated version. They say the boy just listened to the car and knew what was wrong, as if he had a gift. The stories grew with each mouth that repeated them. In a matter of days, he was no longer just a boy helping in a garage. He was the mechanic boy. One morning, in a downtown cafeteria, a local journalist heard the rumor. He smiled and jotted down in his notebook, "A boy who fixes cars on the street. This deserves to be investigated." Back in the garage, Remy continued working in silence, mopping, organizing, fetching parts. But Brock's shadow was always there, manipulating, sabotaging, twisting everyone's perception. Remy was beginning to understand that it was not enough to demonstrate what he knew. There was someone who wanted to erase him and did it so well that no one saw the hands of the real culprit. Rage boiled inside him, but he kept it silent. He was afraid that if he raised his voice, they would throw him back on the street. And he simply could not allow that. That silent war was just beginning, and he, with his small hands, still did not know if he was prepared to face it. The morning was fraught with tension from the start. The sun barely lit the garage walls when a late model car pulled up at the entrance. It was a gleaming sedan, impeccably painted, with a chauffeur who quickly got out to open the back door. From it descended a tall, suited man with dark glasses and an air of superiority that filled the place in seconds. He walked slowly, as if everything belonged to him, and greeted Mr. Caldwell, the garage owner, with a cold gesture. "I am in a hurry," he said without preamble. "This car stalls when starting. I have been to other garages and no one could fix it. I do not want excuses. I want results." Mr. Caldwell nodded nervously. It was clear that this client was no ordinary person. He could bring them prestige, but also ruin their reputation with a single word. The mechanics surrounded the car, checking under the hood. The owner watched impatiently, arms crossed. Remy, from his corner, cleaned the floor in silence, but he could not stop listening to the men's technical debate. Minutes passed and no one could find the fault. The client snorted, annoyed. "Do you not know what you are doing?" Then, unable to help himself, Remy murmured from behind, "It is the pressure valve. It is stuck." Silence became immediate. Everyone turned towards him. Brock was the first to react. "Shut up, young squirt," he grumbled. "No one asked for your opinion here." But the client heard him, raised an eyebrow, and laughed contemptuously. "What is this? Now you use street children as mechanics," he said, letting out a dry chuckle. "What is next? A dog fixing my engine?" The others laughed nervously, infected by the client's arrogance. Remy felt his face burn. He lowered his gaze, but did not back down. "I just wanted to help," he whispered. The man heard him and leaned towards him, almost poking his finger into his chest. "Help? You are not even good enough to clean my shoes, boy. Do you know how much this car is worth? More than you will earn in your entire life begging." The words hit like stones. Some mechanics looked uncomfortable, but no one dared to say anything. Brock took the opportunity to add fuel to the fire. "He is right, sir. This young chap is just in the way. I have said it 1,000 times. He does not belong here." The client's laugh was a whip. "Well, if you want me to keep coming, I recommend you get rid of him. This place looks like a circus with this boy buzzing around." Remy clenched his fists inside. He wanted to scream. He wanted to say he was not a nuisance, that he did know about engines, but fear and hunger choked him. He swallowed, took a deep breath, and raised his head with a courage that surprised even himself. "I am not leaving." The garage fell silent. The client straightened up, incredulous. "What did you say?" Remy looked at him with bright eyes, without tears, his voice firm despite the trembling in his body. "I am not leaving." A murmur ran through those present. Brock let out an incredulous laugh. "Look at him. The hungry little wretch now thinks he is brave." The client shook his head, annoyed, and turned to Mr. Caldwell. "If this child touches my car again, I will not set foot here anymore." Mr. Caldwell swallowed, caught in a dilemma. He did not want to lose the client, but he also could not ignore what he had just witnessed. Elena was the only one who stepped forward. She stood beside Remy, placing a hand on his shoulder. "No one is superfluous here," she said firmly. "This child has more value than many adults, and if all he is asking for is food in exchange for work, he deserves respect." The client snorted in disbelief and walked towards his car. "Finish the job however you can, but I hope not to see that young squirt hanging around here again." He got into the car and drove off with a screech of tires, leaving a dense silence behind him. Brock leaned towards Remy with a twisted smile. "I warned you. One day you are going to drag us all down with you." Remy did not answer. His hands trembled, but not from fear, from suppressed rage. Elena knelt beside him, looked him in the eyes, and spoke in a low voice so only he could hear. "Do not give up. What you did today was great. Not everyone endures such humiliation without bowing their head." Remy swallowed and nodded. Inside, something in him had changed. The hunger in his stomach was still there, but another distinct, stronger hunger had appeared. A hunger for dignity. The rumor had grown too big to ignore. In a matter of days, the name Harlan began to echo through the garage like a persistent sound. Some mentioned it in low voices, others whispered it almost with fear. Elena was the first to face the issue head-on. One afternoon, as Remy finished sweeping, she called him aside to the small office where they kept papers and invoices. She closed the door and showed him her cell phone screen. It was a black and white photo. A young man with a wide smile lifting a trophy over his head. On his chest was a painted number, and behind him rose a racetrack. "Do you recognize him?" Elena asked. Remy approached slowly. He felt a lump in his throat. The man's face had the same eyes he saw every morning in the dirty mirror of an abandoned shop. "He is my father." The words came out as a sigh between fear and certainty. Elena nodded without taking her eyes off him. His name was Victor Harlan. He was a 3-time national motorsport champion, a legend, until a tragedy erased him from everything. Remy swallowed, confused. He barely remembered fragments, his father's voice shouting from the stands, the roar of engines, and then an eternal silence he never understood. "Why does no one talk about him?" he asked innocently. Elena lowered her gaze. "Because fame is cruel, Remy. Today you are a hero, tomorrow no one remembers you." The rumor soon reached Brock, and for him it was a gift. That same afternoon, in front of everyone, he blurted out the news as if it was poison. "So now we know the truth," he shouted with a mocking laugh. "The young squirt is no genius. He is just the son of Victor Harlan, the fallen pilot." The other mechanics froze. Some looked up incredulously. Others nodded as if suddenly everything made sense. Brock continued, fueled by the attention. "Of course, now I understand. He thinks the last name is enough, but let me tell you something. A name does not make a man. This young chap will never be his father." Remy lowered his head. The floor seemed to swallow him. "I do not want to be him," he murmured, barely audible. Brock heard him and smiled cruelly. "Exactly, because even if you wanted to, you never could. Your father lost his career, and you do not have half his talent." Elena intervened furiously. "Enough, Brock! You have no right to speak like that." "No," he sneered. "I am telling the truth. This child lives off a last name that is no longer useful. He is just the shadow of a failure." The silence that followed was unbearable. Remy felt his chest tighten. He did not cry, but his eyes burned like embers. That night, unable to sleep, he walked the streets until he reached a desolate lot on the outskirts. There, covered in dust and rust, was a forgotten car under a torn tarp. He had seen it from afar other times, but had never dared to approach. He approached slowly, his heart beating fast. He removed the tarp and froze. It was an old race car, paint faded with the number he had seen in his father's photo. The air escaped his chest. He climbed into the broken seat, closed his eyes, and imagined the roar of the engine as he had heard it in his childhood. "Father," he whispered, "were you really great, or is it all a lie?" Tears fell unchecked. He clutched the steering wheel with his small, grease-stained hands and silently promised that one day that car would roar again. He stayed there, his forehead resting on the steering wheel, feeling the shadows of his father's lost career also envelop him. But deep down, a spark of rebellion burned. He did not want to be just the son of. He wanted to prove that even from abandonment, he could build something of his own. The rumor was no longer a murmur. It was an echo that traveled from mouth to mouth, multiplying on every corner, in every food stall, on every street where someone had heard of him. The mechanic boy, they called him now. It all began with a client who, amazed by what he had seen in the garage, recorded the moment on his phone when Remy, with small, grease-stained hands, had brought a dead truck back to life. He uploaded it to the internet with a title that seemed straight out of a cheap movie. Street Boy fixes in seconds what adults could not in days. At first, no one took it seriously. It was just another video among millions, but it had something. The image of a thin, barefoot boy in ragged clothes starting an engine among surprised adult men. The scene was captivating. In a few hours, views numbered in the thousands, and then tens of thousands. Comments began to divide. "That boy has a gift. They should support him. This is a setup. Surely they fixed it beforehand and made him pose. What a shame. Adults humiliated by a hungry young chap. They are exploiting an orphan. This is not talent, it is abuse." Remy did not understand the real scope of what was happening. He did not know about networks. He did not know what a viral video meant. All he noticed was that more curious people came to the garage every day. People who were not there to repair anything, just to watch, to take photos, to secretly record him. Some observed him with genuine admiration, others with morbid curiosity, waiting to see him fail. The mechanics were uncomfortable, annoyed by the intrusion, but Mr. Caldwell, seeing that clients were leaving money along the way, said nothing. The only one who burned with fury with every raised phone was Brock. He looked at him as one watches a shadow grow, threatening to swallow him. With each new visit, each laugh, each client who asked to see the boy work, hatred boiled in his blood. "This is a circus," he muttered under his breath, "and I am not the clown." The hardest blow came on a very hot afternoon. A sports car entered the garage and the client asked for it to be checked. As Remy watched, Brock approached the engine with calculated movements. No one noticed him. Feigning inspection, he loosened an ignition cable and returned to his spot as if nothing had happened. "Mr. Caldwell, busy?" asked Remy to try starting it. The boy obeyed, turned the key, and the car coughed. It spat black smoke and immediately died. The car owner let out a contemptuous laugh. "That is the prodigy everyone talks about? He cannot even start a car." Brock raised his voice for everyone to hear. "See, I warned you. This young chap knows nothing. He only ruins what he touches." The client pulled out his phone and recorded the scene amidst laughter. He uploaded the clip with the title, "The Mechanic Boy Fails Live." In a few hours, the video exploded and the avalanche of mockery was relentless. "There it is, the circus is over. I told you it was a lie. Stop believing in miracles. The boy is just a fraud." But the worst was yet to come. That same night, another crueler video appeared. Someone had taken the original footage and edited it with poisonous precision. The clip showed Remy manipulating the engine and immediately a direct cut to black smoke coming out of the car. There was no context, no explanation. It seemed as if the boy had destroyed the car with his own hands. The title was damning. Fraud discovered. The mechanic boy ruins cars. The comments were even more ferocious. What irresponsibility to let him touch a car. They are taking advantage of his father's last name. Just as much of a failure. Poor fool. He thought he was somebody. The video spread like wildfire. Elena was who showed it to Remy. She called him to a corner and showed him her cell phone screen. The boy looked at it in silence, saw his face in the recording, his hands on the engine, and then the explosion of smoke. He swallowed. "It was not me," he murmured, his voice breaking. Elena held his shoulders firmly. "I know, Remy. It is a setup." He looked up, his eyes moist. "But everyone believes I did it." The silence between them was long and heavy. Outside, the laughter of new clients echoed like knives. Elena took a deep breath. "This is not fair. But listen, the only thing that matters is what you know, what you do. Do not let them take that away from you." Remy looked down at his small, trembling hands covered in dry grease. For the first time, he saw them not as a gift, but as a burden. The days were agony. The garage filled with curious onlookers who came only to mock. "Hey boy, how much do you charge to ruin a car? Be careful. Do not touch my car or you will break it. You would be better off begging on the street. That is what you know how to do." Every word pierced him like a blow, but Remy did not leave. He stayed there in silence, sweeping, fetching parts. His face hardened and his eyes shining with wounded pride. Brock watched him from afar with a twisted smile. He had achieved what he wanted to tarnish his image, to turn him into a joke. But what he did not understand was that deep within the boy, the mockery did not extinguish the flame. It hardened it, because if Remy was learning anything, it was that every talent, however small, had a price, and that price was almost always paid in solitude. That night, lying on the cold ground where he slept, he closed his eyes and whispered in silence, "They will not break me." He did not know how or when. He just knew that even if they called him a fraud, even if they recorded him 1,000 times, he would not give up. That was the true price of his talent, to bear the weight of the world without giving up the fight. The heat was suffocating that afternoon when a strange roar was heard at the garage entrance. It was not a healthy engine. It was a forced metallic groan that seemed to cry for help. A battered sedan dragged itself to a halt in front of the door. The owner, a middle-aged man, got out with a frown and his hands on his hips. "I have been to 3 different garages," he said, raising his voice so everyone could hear. "No one has been able to fix this car. If you cannot either, I am sending it straight to the junkyard." The mechanics approached curiously. Mr. Caldwell ordered the hood open. In seconds, a semicircle of men formed around the engine, testing, checking, discussing. Sweat ran down their foreheads as the owner waited, arms crossed, growing more impatient. Minutes passed, which felt like an eternity. One after another, they stepped away in frustration. "It is no use," one said. "The engine is dead," another added. The client snorted. "I already knew that. I am wasting my time." From a corner, with the mop in hand, Remy observed every detail. His eyes did not leave the engine. He listened to it as if they were words in a language he understood and others did not. He took a step forward with a trembling but firm voice. "I can try." Silence fell in the garage. Everyone looked at him as if he had said the biggest stupidity. Brock was the first to react with a dry laugh. "You, with that pile of junk, do not make me laugh." The client looked him up and down and then laughed too, incredulous. "Are you serious? Are you going to let a street child mess with my car?" Remy held his gaze. "If you let me try and I fail, you lose nothing. If it works, you save it from the junkyard." The owner hesitated. There was something in the boy's eyes, a mixture of hunger and certainty that made him pause. "You have 5 minutes," he finally said. "If you ruin it more, I will hold you responsible." Mr. Caldwell nodded in silence. It was risky, but something inside him also wanted to see what would happen. Remy approached the engine. Brock watched him from behind, arms crossed and a twisted smile. As the boy leaned over the parts, Brock moved discreetly, disconnected a secondary cable, and loosened a hidden bolt. No one saw him. "Let us see how much of a prodigy you are now," he murmured under his breath. Remy did not notice. He calmly checked, felt the parts, closed his eyes for an instant, and listened to the echo of the engine as if it was a heartbeat. He moved with a concentration that impressed those present. He took an adjustable wrench and tightened several connections. He tightened screws no one had looked at. He got his arms dirty up to the elbow. "Try it now," he said, sweating. After several minutes, the client turned the key. The engine coughed. It roared for a second and then stopped abruptly. The laughter was immediate. "Ha ha ha ha," Brock exploded. "See, a farce. I told you he knew nothing." The client turned red with anger. "This is a waste of time." Remy felt the world collapsing around him. The words were stuck in his throat. He looked at his small, trembling hands, and for an instant, he doubted everything. Elena stepped forward. "Wait, give him 1 more minute." The client snorted but accepted with a gesture. Remy closed his eyes. He remembered his father's voice in some corner of his memory. "Listen to the engine, son. It never lies." He took a deep breath. He leaned in again and ran his fingers over each cable. Then he noticed it. A loose contact. Something that did not belong. He quickly adjusted, tightened the bolt Brock had left loose, and looked up again. "Now," he said. The owner turned the key again. This time the engine roared powerfully, steadily, like a beast awakened after a long sleep. The noise filled the garage, erasing all laughter. There was a silence of astonishment, and then a growing murmur. "It cannot be," one of the mechanics whispered. "He did it." The client's eyes widened, incredulous. "Incredible." Elena smiled proudly. What no one had noticed was that one of the curious onlookers had recorded everything on his phone, from the initial mockery to the moment the engine roared. He uploaded the video to social media with the title, "The Mechanic Boy Humiliates Disbelievers with an Impossible Fix." In a few hours, the clip exploded. Millions of views, torrents of comments, improvised headlines on local pages. A true genius. This is not seen every day. The fraud was Brock, not him. For the first time in weeks, the wind seemed to blow in Remy's favor. His name, his grease-stained face, his firm gaze began to spread as a symbol of pure talent. The same talent they tried to suppress now made him a positive viral phenomenon. And although Remy did not fully understand what was happening, the only thing he felt inside was a deep relief. For a moment, the world had believed in him. The garage was no longer the same. Since the video of the impossible challenge had gone viral, not only curious people with cell phones in hand arrived, but also luxury cars. Wealthy clients who would never have set foot in that place if it were not for the boy everyone was talking about. But with the new clients also came reporters. First, a local newspaper, then a radio station, and later a television station that appeared with cameras, lights, and microphones. "We want to know the whole story," they said. "Who is this child really?" Remy hid behind a workbench, uncomfortable, not understanding why so many people pointed at him. Elena protected him as much as she could, but the journalists insisted. One day, one of them arrived with evidence in hand. He showed everyone an old, yellowed newspaper clipping. The photo, blurry with time, showed a smiling man holding a trophy. At the bottom of the image, it read, "Victor Harlan, 3-time national motorsports champion." The journalist held up the clipping for the cameras. "We have confirmed that this boy, Remy Harlan, is the son of the forgotten 3-time champion." The air froze in the garage. No one said anything for several seconds. Only the click of the cameras and the distant hum of a compressor broke the silence. Remy stared at the photo. The man's smile was the same he remembered in glimpses between dreams and blurry memories. The same sparkle in his eyes. He felt an emptiness in his stomach, a mixture of pride and fear. The mechanics looked at each other. Some were astonished, others suspicious. One murmured, "No wonder he has such an ear for engines." It is in his blood, but not everyone saw him with admiration. Brock, from the back, smiled with that poisonous sneer everyone knew. He walked to the center and raised his voice, enjoying the moment. "See, now it all makes sense. He is no prodigy. He is just the son of someone famous." The journalists turned their cameras towards him, as if expecting him to continue speaking. Brock, delighted to have an audience, continued. "All this fuss was always that, taking advantage of a last name. He lives off the shadow of a dead man." Remy flinched. The words pierced him like knives. "I do not want to take advantage of anything," he whispered, his voice trembling. But Brock did not stop. He took another step closer to him, pointing his finger. "Of course you do. You enjoy the attention, the applause, people coming to see you, but the truth is simple. You will never be your father. Never." The cameras captured every word. The murmurs of the others mixed with flashes and hurried questions. Remy wanted the earth to swallow him. "I do not want to be him," he managed to say, lowering his gaze. "Then what are you?" Brock retorted, leaning over him. "A fraud, an invention, the echo of a man who is no longer here." Remy's eyes welled up, but he did not cry. He clenched his fists, feeling his nails dig into his palms. His chest hurt as if someone was squeezing it hard. "What I do myself," he finally replied, his voice broken but firm. The journalist pounced with more questions, excited by the confrontation. "Are you saying your talent does not come from your father? Do you want to be better than him? How do you feel about carrying that last name?" The boy could barely breathe. Each question was a blow, each flash a reminder that he could no longer hide. Elena tried to calm the situation, interposing herself between Remy and the cameras. "Enough! Do you not see he is just a child?" But Brock did not stop. He took another step, standing so close that he could almost feel Remy's agitated breath. "Listen carefully, young squirt," he said in a low but clear voice. "You are nobody without that last name, and if you dare to believe otherwise, I myself will make sure to prove it." Remy looked him directly in the eyes. His body trembled, torn between fear and rage. For an instant, he thought of lunging at him, of demonstrating with a blow that he was not weak, but he held back. "I am not a shadow." He finally spat, his jaw clenched. The silence in the garage was total. Everyone held their breath. Brock raised his hand as if to push him. Elena stepped forward. "Mr. Caldwell raised his voice like thunder. "Enough!" The echo bounced off the walls, making even the cameras freeze. Brock slowly lowered his hand, but his gaze was a fire of hatred directed at the boy. Remy, gasping, felt that he had just crossed a boundary. He was no longer just the boy who fixed engines for food. Now he was a last name, a story, a stigma, and in his heart burned a question he could not answer. Was his talent truly his own, or just the inherited shadow of a father who was no longer there? The cameras were gone, but the echo of their flashes and questions lingered inside the garage like an impossible-to-silence noise. The atmosphere was stale. Remy worked in silence, head bowed, not daring to look at anyone. His hands trembled even when he only held a rag. Brock's words resonated in his head. "You will never be your father. You are nobody without that last name." For the first time since he had entered the garage, he felt the ground crumbling beneath his feet. It was not just a mockery or the fake videos. It was something deeper, the doubt. Did what he did truly come from him, or was it simply borrowed blood from someone he could never equal? That week, Brock exploited the open rift. He walked among the mechanics like a poisonous preacher. "You will see," he would say in a low voice. "Sooner or later, this young squirt will drag us all down. And what if Mr. Caldwell keeps him just because he brings publicity?" Another responded cautiously. "Cheap publicity," Brock grumbled. "They already call us the Mechanic Boys Garage, as if the rest of us did not exist." The words took root. Some began to look at Remy with annoyance, no longer with curiosity. Others openly murmured that it would be better if he left. Remy noticed it. He felt the glances like needles in his back every time he bent down to pick up a screw or reached for a tool. No one said it to his face, but the rejection was there, growing. One afternoon, while cleaning in silence, Brock could not restrain himself. He said it in front of everyone with a firm voice, as if pronouncing judgment. "That boy should not be here. He is a nuisance. You know it." There was silence. No one contradicted him. Some even lowered their gaze as if the phrase freed them from the discomfort of thinking the same thing. Remy felt something inside him break. That night, when the garage closed and the street was deserted, Elena found the boy sitting on the sidewalk, hugging his knees, his head buried, his eyes red from holding back tears. She approached slowly and sat beside him. "Remy," she murmured. He looked up, his voice barely audible. "Everyone wants me to leave, and maybe they are right. I am just a name, nothing more." Elena took his small, cold hand. "You are not a name. You are a life, your own, and you have the right to decide what you do with it." Remy did not answer. A tear rolled down his cheek. "Come with me," Elena said, standing up. They walked in silence for several minutes until they reached a quiet cemetery surrounded by trees. The air was cold and the moon barely illuminated the tombstones. Elena stopped in front of a simple grave with a plaque worn by time. She knelt, ran her hand over the marble, and murmured, "Here lies your father, Victor Harlan." Remy stood still, his heart racing, took a step forward, and read the engraved name. His name, the same one he carried like an impossible weight. He knelt slowly, touched the cold stone, and whispered, "Father." Tears streamed down uncontrollably. He could not remember his full voice, his laughter, his embrace, only loose fragments like blurry photos in his memory. And now, in front of that grave, he felt that everything he lacked was concentrated in that void. "They say I am just your shadow," he murmured, "that I am worth nothing by myself." Elena hugged him by the shoulders. "Listen, Remy, your father was great, yes, but that does not condemn you. You do not have to be him or better than him. You just have to be you." The boy buried his forehead against the stone, closing his eyes tightly. "And if that is not enough, it is enough," Elena said firmly, "because your worth is not in what is written in a last name. It is in what you choose to build with your own hands." Remy looked at her, tears on his face and a new sparkle in his eyes. It was not a definitive answer, but it was a spark that might one day ignite something bigger. That night, leaving the cemetery, Remy walked in silence. The weight of the last name still rested on his shoulders, but it no longer bent him. Now he knew he was not walking alone. His father's name could be a burden, but it could also be the starting point for something different. The garage air felt lighter that morning. Although the weight in Remy's heart was still strong, the visit to his father's grave had marked him, but also left him with a certainty. He could not continue living amidst comparisons and insults. If he wanted to stay, if he wanted to be somebody, he had to build something of his own. That idea stayed with him for several days as he collected screws and helped with small repairs. He repeated it silently like a mantra. "Not for the last name, not for my father, but for me." It was then that he saw it clearly. There were many like him, children who roamed the streets hungry, who slept in cold corners, who had never had an opportunity. If he had learned to listen to engines, why could they not too? Remy told Elena one afternoon while she was reviewing papers, "I want to teach other children, those who are on the street like me. I can show them the little I know, how to use a wrench, how to listen to an engine." Elena looked at him, surprised. "Are you sure?" "Yes, if I learned with nothing, they can too." Elena smiled tenderly. There was a maturity in those words, a decision she had not heard from him before. "Then let us do it," she replied. "I will help you organize it." The announcement spread quickly, not in newspapers or on television. It spread among the children surviving on the streets themselves. "The mechanic boy wants to teach." It was a simple yet powerful message. On the first day, only 5 arrived, thin, timid, with eyes full of distrust. Remy greeted them with a nervous smile and some old toolboxes. "This is not school," he told them. "No one here mocks you if you do not know. We are going to learn together." He showed them how to identify a wrench, how to turn a screw without breaking it, how to differentiate a positive from a negative cable. The little ones watched him attentively, some with more hunger than enthusiasm, but little by little the spark of curiosity appeared. For Remy, that was different from everything he had experienced. He was not fixing a car to gain respect. He was sharing the little he knew, seeing others discover something new thanks to him, but not everyone saw it favorably. Brock, from a distance, watched with rage. "Ridiculous," he muttered. "Now he thinks he is a teacher of beggars." He envied the attention Remy received and, worse, feared that this initiative would turn him into something more than a mere viral curiosity. He feared it would turn him into a symbol. It did not take long for him to try to sabotage it. One afternoon, while Remy was preparing an old engine to show the children how to start it, Brock loosened screws and disconnected cables, hoping everything would go wrong in front of the impromptu group. When Remy turned the key, the engine coughed and almost died. There was a murmur of disappointment among the little ones. Brock smiled from the shadows, convinced he had won, but Remy did not give up. He listened to the noise, lowered his head, and in seconds detected what was wrong. He calmly adjusted, reconnected a cable, and tried again. This time, the engine roared to life. The children jumped for joy, clapping loudly. Yes, it worked. The sound of those small, sincere claps was like a bomb. Remy smiled, his eyes moist. For the first time in a long time, he did not feel alone or singled out. He felt useful. Brock clenched his teeth, defeated. The gatherings grew. From 5 children, they went to 10, then 20. They arrived in dirty clothes, hungry, with tough stories. But seeing Remy work, they transformed. He showed them how to clean parts, how to organize screws, how to identify small faults. And when someone managed to do it well, everyone applauded as if they had won a championship. One day, someone recorded the scene. Dozens of children surrounding Remy, looking at him with admiration, chanting his name as if he were a hero. The video flew across social media with a simple title, "The Mechanic Boy Teaches Street Children." The images were powerful. It did not show a fraud. It did not show a famous last name. It showed a 10-year-old boy, poor and thin, turned into a teacher for others like him in a matter of hours. That clip went viral, and for the first time, people were not discussing him as a prodigy or imposter. They were sharing him as an example. Remy, seeing all those children applaud him, felt something new, different from everything he had experienced until then. It was not fame. It was not empty recognition. It was something deeper. The certainty that he was building a future, not for his last name, not for his father, but his own. And that of all those children who looked at him as if he were living proof that they could still dream. The day of the tribute dawned with a bright sun, as if the city wanted to cleanse, if only for a few hours, the shadows of oblivion. In the central square, banners with old photos had been placed. Victor Harlan lifting trophies, smiling from atop a podium, embraced by fans who now seemed like ghosts of the past. The event promised to bring together journalists, fans, and residents. It was not just to remember the fallen 3-time champion. It was also, although no one said it aloud, to see the son everyone was talking about. Remy arrived accompanied by Elena. He walked nervously, his cap pulled low, trying to hide the eyes that had made him famous in viral videos. But it was impossible to go unnoticed. As soon as he stepped into the square, dozens of eyes fixed on him. Murmurs grew like a wave. "It is him, the mechanic boy. They say he is just like his father. Let us see if today he proves it was not just luck." Remy swallowed. The tribute was no longer just for Victor Harlan. Now, it was also a test for him. On the main stage stood a classic car, half restored, the same model his father had once raced. The organizers had prepared it to be started in honor of the 3-time champion, but the engine had been silent for years, and no one was sure it would roar again. The presenter spoke with a solemn voice. "Today, we remember the great Victor Harlan, a 3-time champion who took our country's name to the highest levels, and today, with us, his son." The public applauded, though some did so coldly, others with curiosity. Remy walked onto the stage with slow steps. He felt small, tiny against the weight of the applause and that name that followed him like a shadow. The presenter gestured towards the car. "They say you have your father's hands. Would you like to show us?" Remy took a deep breath, approached the hood, and opened it. The smell of rust and dust immediately hit him. It was a tired, forgotten engine, begging to be heard. Among the crowd, Brock watched with a twisted smile. He had managed to infiltrate as part of the support team. While everyone watched Remy, he moved stealthily and loosened a key connection, calculating that when the car was started, it would explode in smoke in front of everyone. "Today, your circus ends, young squirt," he whispered, hiding his grease-stained hands. Remy did not see him, but something about the engine seemed strange to him. He touched the parts, ran his fingers over the cables, and a premonition ran through his body. He closed his eyes and remembered his father's voice. "Listen, son, the engine never lies. If it beats irregularly, something is wrong." The murmurs from the public grew. Some were already impatient. "He is going to take all day. He probably does not know what to do." Remy swallowed, leaned in, and noticed a loose bolt. He hesitated. If he adjusted it wrong, it could fail worse. But he trusted his instinct. He calmly tightened it, reconnected the cable that was out of place, and looked up. "Now," he said with a firm voice. An assistant turned the key. For an instant, the silence was absolute. The engine coughed, roared, and suddenly the sound filled the square like thunder. It was a powerful, deep roar, as if Victor Harlan himself had returned for a moment. The crowd erupted in applause and shouts. "Incredible! He did it! Just like his father!" Remy closed his eyes, letting the roar envelop him. For the first time, he did not feel it as a burden, but as a bridge between his father's past and the future he was building. In the crowd, Brock clenched his teeth. He had planned a humiliation, an accident that would sink the boy forever. But what he saw was quite the opposite. The defeat of his hatred against the ingenuity of those small hands. Elena, with tears in her eyes, applauded loudly, not only for the roar of the engine, but for Remy's inner roar, which was finally beginning to sound louder than the voices that wanted to silence him. That day, amidst applause and cameras, Remy did not feel like the son of a man, nor a victim of a past. He felt like a mechanic. He felt like a builder. He felt like the owner of his own roar. And the crowd, listening to him, did not see a shadow. They saw the future. The square was packed. From early morning, entire families, young and old, had gathered to see the boy everyone in the country was talking about. They were no longer just curious neighbors or local journalists. Now, there were television cameras, correspondents from other places, and above all, thousands of people who wanted to hear the boy who had transformed his life through grease, tears, and determination. Remy, in clean clothes for the first time in a long time, waited behind the stage. His hands were sweating. He could hear the murmur of the crowd like a distant, constant roar that thrilled him. Elena was by his side, smiling with that warmth that had saved him so many times. "Are you ready?" she said softly. "I do not know," he confessed in a low voice. "Yes, you do. Just remember who you are. Not a last name, not a rumor. You, Remy," she said. He took a deep breath. The presenter appeared on stage, his voice amplified by the loudspeakers. "With you, the mechanic boy, Remy Harlan." The thunder of applause was deafening. Thousands of people held up impromptu banners with his name. Cell phones lit up, recording every second. Remy walked slowly to the center of the stage. He felt every gaze fixed on him, every expectant breath. In the front row, Brock stood with his arms crossed, his face hardened by rage. He had lost. He knew it. But still, his gaze sought to intimidate the boy, as if with just a gesture he could make him stumble. Remy looked at him for an instant, not with fear, not with hatred. He looked at him with a serenity that disarmed any attempt at attack. He climbed onto the podium. The microphone was in front of him. The murmur of the crowd died down, as if a reverent silence covered the entire square. Everyone expected a long speech, a dramatic confession, a tale of suffering. But Remy, with a firm voice and contained emotion, simply said, "It does not matter where you come from or what you lost. What matters is what you choose to do with what you have." For a second, the silence was absolute. And then, like thunder, the applause erupted. Thousands of hands clapped in unison. Shouts of support filled the air. Tears ran down the faces of those who had only come out of curiosity and found a symbol. Elena applauded loudly, her eyes bright with pride. The street children he had taught shouted his name enthusiastically. "Remy! Remy! Remy!" Journalists captured every angle, every word repeated in immediate headlines. But what mattered was not the cameras. What mattered was the energy of that crowd, which no longer saw a poor boy or the son of a forgotten three-time champion. They saw someone who restored their hope. In the midst of the uproar, Brock stood motionless. His mouth opened for an instant, but no words came out. The roar of the applause crushed him, reducing him to silence. He had tried to destroy him, sabotage him, humiliate him, and yet there the boy stood, transformed into an unbreakable symbol. Remy looked down for a second, pressed his lips together, and barely smiled. He no longer carried only the weight of hunger, of mockery, of a last name. Now he carried something different, the strength of having transformed his pain into shared courage. When he stepped off the stage, dozens of children approached to hug him. Not ordinary children, but those who lived on the street as he had lived. Their faces reflected the same things he had once felt: hunger, fear, tiredness. But now they also reflected something new. The certainty that they could fight, that there was a path. Elena embraced him tightly. "You did it," she whispered. Remy took a deep breath and looked at the crowd, at the applause, at the smiles. He had not done it for fame, nor for money, nor even for recognition. He had done it because he had learned a simple and powerful truth. True value is not in what is lost or inherited, but in what one chooses to build with what they have. That night, when the square was emptying and only lights remained on in the distance, Remy stayed for a few minutes in silence. He was no longer the boy who asked for food in exchange for fixing a car. Now he was something more, a symbol, a beacon for thousands who needed to believe that you can always start over. And as the last voices faded somewhere in the sky, he felt his father smiling. Thank you for watching this story to the end. Subscribe, leave your like, and comment from where you are watching us.